talking about segregation, integration, desegregation. And that just didn't make sense to me, given what I now knew I was working with, because I had, in addition to teaching all these students, I was also doing these seminars and doing consulting on the side. Because, of course, once people came to the seminars and saw what it was, and that there was this thing that they didn't know anything about that they were responsible for under the law, people asked me to come to their workplaces as well. So I still didn't have the language. And one day I was reading the newsletter from one of my daughter's schools, their old school, as a matter of fact, in Jacksonville. And I don't even know why I was reading this newsletter, because, it had been 2 years since they were even there. But I've learned to listen to the universe. So I was reading this, and there was a piece by, I think it was a valedictorian, who was talking about the diversity of activities that were offered and how important it was to be able to have that, because you took something different from each one. And I thought, diversity. I bet I could use that word to describe what it is that's in my head about this.
Devin Alphin is a wealth manager, speaker, and author of the Wealth Blueprint, a guide to financial mastery for professionals and entrepreneurs. With over 15 years of experience in financial services, specializing in comprehensive financial planning, Devin brings both technical expertise and real life perspective to his work. His practice specializes in serving high income professionals and business owners who are seeking comprehensive, values aligned strategies for building wealth, optimizing taxes, protecting their families, and creating a legacy. In addition to his advisory work, Devin leads educational webinars, speaks on financial wellness and wealth building, and provides tools that make financial planning accessible, actionable, and culturally relevant. Devin lives in Georgia with his wife, two teenage sons, and their family dog. When away from the office, Devin can be found writing songs and poetry in their home recording studio, playing catch outside with his sons, or in middle school and high school how to manage finances. And they affectionately call him Professor D. And today we want to welcome Professor D. Welcome, Devin.
So I just like helping people get that transformation. I was sharing with Renee, I just was in DC over the weekend and got a chance to speak at the Generational Wealth Expo. Like everything, just about everything my client can throw at me, I've been through financially.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
And
value.
During the time of going through said things, it was like, but now it's like, okay, I see why I had to kind of go through a lot of that stuff, is because now when I sit down and I'm doing either face-to-face or virtual meetings, I have a lot of people that look at talking to a financial planner like almost talking to either A, the dentist, like, oh my God, I can't believe I gotta do this, or B, talking to the priest in confession.
At least people who came to you.
Right, Chris.
So I can see that.
They've got to like lay down all of the stuff that they're ashamed of, the stuff that's like been in the closet that but they can't continue to do it because it's weighing them down and they can't move forward to where they want to be in life. Yeah. And so those moments of just pure vulnerability where they got to lay it out, or where I ask certain questions that just hit up against that sensitive spot for them, and they got to open that up. And I'm able to sit there and go, oh, I remember when I was going through that. And they're like, wait, what? Whew. That sort of thing. Yeah. And so just being able to be somebody who can kind of take the edge off for a person in those types of moments, and then show them a way through it, or help give them certain tools to get through that, or help them to change their perspective about their situation. So when they walk out of the meeting feeling very hopeful, or they walk out and it's like, okay, now I have a clear strategy around how I'm going to get myself there. That to me is that's what you do it for. And that's part of what I wanted to capture and put into the book as well. Is a lot of people with these financial books, they get right to the numbers, right? And it's just pure black and white numbers and technical terms and all of that. In the Wealth Blueprint, my very first chapter is around mindset. Yes, we're going to talk through how you can get yourself to some of these things that people want to talk about, like generational wealth and, leaving a legacy and reducing taxes. And I promise we're going to get to all of that. I can talk you through a lot of those different things. But if we have not addressed what's happening here, this is going to have a direct effect on these. You see what I'm saying? So taking that time with that first chapter to really talk through some of the things that I had to do for myself. And, hey, I'm not the end all be all, know it all, but try this to kind of help reprogram some of those limiting beliefs and some of those stories that may stand in your way. I think that matters. So that's where I start.
Yeah. Well, that's where it all starts. I mean, it starts in the brain, right? So if you don't get that part right, because you're dealing with whole people, when you take that holistic approach, you end up being able to draw people more and open up their heads to when they get to the part about the numbers.
That's it.
Because they're dealing with this from where they are as a human being that got them into the situation in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that you had your bumps along the road that we now know were just opportunities that the universe presented to you so that you could be able to do what you're doing with them. Ends up being something that opens them up more because they don't feel like you're on some mountain, giving down the edict. You've been there. You've been there. You know what you're talking about. And getting this part straight first makes it so much easier to get the other part straight first.
Yep.
Yeah, you just did a whole confessional yourself in the beginning of the book. So how can you not talk to someone or someone can't find their way to talk to you through the book about what they need to do after you just your heart and soul out? Well, here we go. And he made it. Now I'm reading his book.
Yep.
It's a difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we are, quite frankly, we're very, it's changing, but we're very underrepresented in the financial industry.
Sure.
Especially at the level that I've been blessed to reach, and the conversations that come along with that level. We are underrepresented. And so when I do sit down with clients, especially that look like me and look like us, a lot of times there is such a level of distrust that has been built up that just sitting down with me is refreshing within itself. But then again, we have high income earners, high net worth individuals across the board of demographics. That is not specific to one demographic. But what is very unique is within ours is a lack of education. A lot of times they are first generation millionaires or first generation business owners who have successful businesses. And so it's like, I'm at this level, but I have no example, no model to go off of. I can't go back there to get the advice. And I don't know what going forward looks like. And so the level of confusion in that space a lot of times is more real than what it may look like for another demographic in those same shoes. You see what I'm saying? And so I pride myself on being able to, again, say, hey, I know where you're coming from, right? And I also know the way forward too. So
you must be such a blessing for them. I know you were for me, but if I was in that really desperate situation like that, oh my gosh, you would be such a godsend. I mean, and I wasn't even in that kind of situation, so I can imagine. Yeah, well, in a way, retirement was like that, right? Because you were who came, and I should say, the reason we met was because the university provides your services as part of moving toward retirement, because they want people to be able to retire comfortably. So if you had, and I didn't even realize this until, it was time for it to happen to me. If you have a certain level of retirement, you are referred to people like you. You're not the only one, but they have a cadre of people that people go to for looking toward retirement. What do I need to sort of make sure I have all my ducks in a row? And I can remember our first meeting, and at our first meeting, me thinking, now I don't let nobody play with my money. But I think he's okay. And I don't know if you remember, but then we had lunch together, because I'm like, am I seriously going to let this man deal with my money? I was just so convinced. And you pointed me in the right direction about what I needed to do to set myself up. I took your advice and did every single thing that you told me to do.
Yep.
And it gave me a peace of mind that I would not have been able to do on my own. I mean, I just didn't know those pieces. And when I kept in touch with you and then found out you had gone out on your own, I didn't have any hesitation whatsoever in keeping you. And then when you told me what you were doing about establishing your own business, wanting to have actually, it was sort of a suite of things, because you had done some talking on your own, going out and speaking to schools and stuff, and you realized that there was this real need at a very young age for kids to learn, to start to think about money and how it worked. And you realized the deficits in the community, and you wanted to create a book to deal with that, and other things to go along with it. I mean, I absolutely bought in, absolutely believed, because I had already seen what you were, the value that you had, and being able to serve that community. I knew your heart was in the right place, and that is always a huge piece for me when I'm dealing with anybody. I'm willing to trust you only if your heart is in the right place and I believe in what it is that you're doing. And you gave me enough that I knew all those pieces were in order. So you being able, you were one of the first people I thought about when we decided to do this, and sort of answer the question, finances have to do with DEI. What does DEI have to do with that? It was like, I got somebody for that one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
A couple of things. I'm going to kind of explain you just when you said, I didn't know, don't let anybody mess with my money, and I came in and I saw you. Did you get one of those messages in your head that we usually get about, that Black people, Black people have not been helpful to other Black people in dealing with money, especially when you know you're doing and you're putting your entire trust in someone else. That has been messages that are running through our heads. And how did you overcome that thought?
Yeah. And this is a really important piece for people to understand. The kind of messages that we walk around in our head with, that we make decisions on the basis of, without even realizing the messages are necessarily in our heads, are messages that go out to everyone. Now, people in groups that have negative messages, the society gives negative messages about them. Blacks are lazy. Blacks don't want to do anything. They don't care about people, all this kind of nonsense. We hear those messages, but we also are living a life that's quite different than that. We know we are capable of being able to perform. We know we can do well, stuff like that. So walking in, Renee, you're right. I mean, all of that stuff is in your head. But after talking with Devin, said, oh, okay, I'm there with him, because he clearly knew what he was doing. And there was a manner about him that made it so I trusted him. I wasn't just another number for him. I wasn't just another account. We connected, and because of that connection, I was able to feel him in a way that I would not have been able to with somebody who did not present that to me. And I've had those people do that before. And it was like, okay, well, that's business as usual. With him, there was a connection. So it was a combination of not only trusting him because I knew that he knew what he was talking about, but also feeling like he understood what I needed to do. He understood where I was coming from, and he treated me like a person as opposed to just another client.
Very nice. And I guess that is part of the reason I'm assuming, and I'd like you to answer, is that part of the reason why you decided to go out on your own, to have your own company, because you could provide that kind of personal touch?
Yes. I felt limited after a while. So I'll tell you what, real quick, I'll just kind of lay out the trajectory of my career and you'll kind of see why it made sense, right? So I started my career right around 2009-ish, 2010. I was a young dad. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I decided to drop out of college to avoid going into any more debt when I had my first son. And so I decided basically I'm going to put on a suit and I'm going to go find a job. That's what I'm going to do. Right. And I walked into a bank and a woman, I'll say a Black woman at that, said, you know what? I really like your hustle. I like your drive. Come back Monday. You've got a job as a bank teller. And so I came back Monday and I was a bank teller. I had never done anything finance or anything of that nature. That's not what I went to school for. But in about 9 or 10 months of working as a bank teller, I decided I liked it. I kind of liked this direction that things were going. I felt good about myself. We went through 2 gunpoint robberies in that bank.
What?
2 gunpoint robberies. I'm talking about the ones you see in the movies where somebody is standing on the counter, waving the gun, screaming, the whole nine. I went through 2 of those. And that's when I said, you know what? I don't think I want to be behind the counter anymore counting the money. I don't think I like it back here. And so
Were you the teller? Were you the teller that got the note? Or
no, I was 1-2 down from her, and I'll just say what she went through was just so traumatic. I mean, the gun was at her forehead.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I'm one of the ones who's pressing the button, the silent button up under the counter. Like I'm seeing the whole thing go down. Went through 2 of those. Actually had to go to court to testify when the court hearing happened, but I never made it into the courtroom because apparently the guy who robbed the bank was a part of a ring of certain crimes that had taken place, and someone within the ring had flipped on him and flipped on the guy at the head of the ring. So I never even saw the courtroom. But the point was, it gave me enough to know I don't want to put hands on the money anymore. Those are the guys that get robbed, right? So it made me start to look at, okay, well, where do I go from here? And I basically wanted to go to being one of the people who sat out in the lobby and worked with the customers at their desk and their computer. Nobody's robbing them, right? And so my career progressed into being able to do that. That was a grind. It was better, but it was a grind. It was a lot of long hours involved, but I started noticing that there would be a gentleman who would walk in the bank, walk to the back, meet with his clients, and then he'd leave the bank, whereas we had to kind of stand or, be with customers all day. He seemed to control his time more. And so I started to connect with him, found out he was an investment advisor for the bank. And so, what does it take to do that? And he's telling me you got to get certain licenses and so on and so forth. So I shadowed him for a while. The branch manager, another Black woman, says, hey, I notice you're taking to that. You're referring a lot of business his way. Would you be interested in getting your licenses? If so, the bank will pay for them. Yes. Right. So late night studying turns into investment licenses. And now at this point, I'm 24, 25, and I'm responsible for about 4 or 5 bank branches, their investment activity, right? At about 4 or 5 different branches in the metro Atlanta area. So that was amazing. That was amazing. But at the same time, it was not fully paying the bills like I needed it to. And so I'll fast forward, got to a point where you got to make a decision. What direction are you going? This is nice, but this isn't what you need. By that time, we had our second son and so on and so forth. I applied for a position that if you would have read the job description of that position, you would have thought you needed like 10 years worth of experience at least. And I'm doing okay, but I'm only 2-3 years into this investment career. This is the big boys here. And my wife was like, apply, just go, So the combination of her wise words and some level of desperation, I applied. Do you know that I went through a 7-interview process that lasted like 4 months? It's the longest hiring process I think I've ever been through, like 7 interviews. I could tell you a story around just the hiring process and everything that I had to go through to beat out other applicants that I know were more qualified than me. But I ended up landing this position as a wealth manager with the company. This was no longer banks at this point, right? This was a company that strictly dealt with the retirement accounts of many highly compensated individuals, primarily in higher education as well as healthcare.
I wasn't one of them. I was not one of those highly paid individuals in higher ed.
So I landed that position, totally life-changing. And I had to learn a lot to feel like I belonged, even though, I made it. What's for you is for you. It took me some time to grow into the acceptance that I was at that level now. Imagine, I'm a 26-year-old baby-faced black male college dropout sitting across the desk from a 70-year-old white cardiologist. He's got a decorated career. He's ready to retire. And I'm telling him what to do with his millions. There you go.
Wow. Amazing. So like you said, what God has for you, He has for you.
What is for you is for you. So I learned a lot. I did that for about 9 years. So I'm getting to the point of, okay, having to separate, having to go a different direction, right? So I did that for 9 years. I really grew into being passionate about financial planning and seeing the power of the transformation that it can create, the peace of mind that it can create for someone. And it really helped me to kind of take the rose-colored glasses off to what wealth really is. And it helped me to understand wealth is way more than just a dollar. It's way more than just a dollar amount. And that's what I used to think is, oh, if you've got a lot of money, you're wealthy. No, not quite. If you don't have peace of mind, you're not wealthy. If you don't have a certain level of understanding about how your money is working for you, you're not wealthy. There is definitely a difference between being rich and being wealthy. And even though you make a lot of money, even if you have a high income, that does not make you wealthy. It just means you have a high income. Yeah. Income does not equal wealth. It can by going through a process, but income does not automatically mean the output of wealth. Totally different things. Okay. So learning that process and how to take that high income and turn it into wealth and really being able to, share that knowledge with different individuals, whether it's high income or low income, this process is this process. And being able to apply that over and over and over again to many different people from many different walks of life in many different situations, that's where I really built my confidence. And that's also where I kind of developed my system and my approach. And that's what I extracted from that position, and am able to, put that in a book or put that into a regular everyday conversation. And that's really my skill set, is being able to communicate the process and the understanding of wealth and creating wealth. But anyway, fast forward 9 years. And I get to a point where my wife and I, we've made this decision to homeschool, and I'm really feeling more passionate about applying that in the community. I'm starting to do little things like working with kids, which last year alone was fun. I taught middle and high schoolers financial education one day out of the week, every Wednesday. I did that for the whole 40-week school year. I did. I showed up, was in a classroom with a group of 20 to 25 middle and high schoolers, and it was financial education and just kind of life skills and all of that for a whole school year. That was super fun. I am officially Professor D to those students. Like to this day, hey, Professor D.
Oh my God.
That really was awesome. But my heart was wanting to do more stuff like that. We had just came out of COVID. Long story short, the company wanted me there in the office a certain amount of time throughout the week. But what my life had become while during COVID was in a different direction. And, I'm still doing the job. I'm still making it happen. On paper, I'm one of the best. They didn't care, and I don't want to make it sound like they didn't care, but it's just, they were going this direction, I was going that direction. And finally it came to a head, and it was basically, listen, you can either resign or we can let you go. And in the finance world, you don't want to get let go because that can impact your licenses a certain kind of way. So I chose to resign, and that's what launched me into entrepreneurship and saying, okay, well, what's it look like from here? I'm going to take this skill set. I'm going to develop my own practice, work with the clients that I want to work with, and try to build this thing out, as best as I can. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. It's got its highs, it's got its lows, it's got its bumps along the way. But one of the things that's come out of it is, like I said, even that opportunity to do that last school year, that I would have never been able to do that. Being able to focus in and fully write the book, starting to speak more. It's turning into things. It's turning into things. And honestly, I was able to land my largest client ever from my corporate America days, or, I've been able to land clients that I wouldn't have been able to land and to work with if I were still in that situation. So.
You weren't supposed to be in that situation. It was good for what it was good for, but it was just a step into what it is that we're put here to do.
Definitely.
What did you name your company?
So my oldest son, his middle name is King, and my youngest son, his name is Honor. So I've been playing around with, I'm still just kind of doing everything up under my name, just, Devin, Alphin, LLC, but I'm playing around with the name King and Honor Wealth Management as a way to just kind of give an ode to both the boys.
You said King Hunter?
King Honor, HONOR.
King Honor.
King and Honor Wealth Management.
What great middle names.
Thank you.
You have to live up to it, huh?
Oh, yeah.
You got the honor, and we're expecting that to happen.
That's it. Good. So yeah, King and Honor Wealth Management is the thought that I'm playing around with for when I really formalize it. But it has definitely been a journey. But I'm excited. I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish so far. Obviously, we always want more, and we want to be at a certain place. But Wisdom tells me just pace it. Just pace it. Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah, this country is getting ready to go through the largest wealth transfer over the next 20 years. The amount of assets that are going to pass from the baby boomer generation to millennials and beyond the amount is extremely, it's a very large amount, I'll say. Now, with that said, a lot of misunderstanding happens about the transfer. And so this is where that conversation around legacy becomes more practical. Basic things that anybody can check on for themselves and make sure they have in place are your estate documents, first and foremost, right? Your wills, your power of attorneys, all of those things. I get a question a lot of times, well, do I need a trust? I'm hearing so much about trust. We can have that conversation, but let's first talk about, do you have a will? 70% of Black Americans do not have a will. In other words, 7 out of 10 of Black Americans do not have a will. Why is that so valuable? Is because if you're not familiar with, if you pass, your loved ones must go through the process of probate, which is basically it's a public court process of essentially closing out your life. So, for instance, if you had a home in your name and it's, no spouse is living or whatever the case may be, that home needs to be appraised. And if there's a mortgage on it, how does that mortgage get paid? Is somebody taking it over, or does the house have to be sold? If the house has to be sold, there has to be an appraisal to know how much it's worth. So who's going to handle that? The final tax return, right? There's just all of these things that kind of have to be closed out. And so a person has to get put in charge of closing all of those items out. And that's that process of probate, where they're going to name that person if you do not have a will already. Your will, aka your last will and testament, is that document that tells the court, this is the person that's supposed to do that, and these are the things that I want that person to do. If there is no will, and 70% of Black Americans do not have a will, if there is no will, then you are putting all of your financial life in the hands of the court for the court to say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe, you're going to be the person that does it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's an issue when there is a report out that came out in 2017 by Prosperity Now that basically says that Black wealth is estimated to be zero by the year 2053.
Wow.
Black wealth is estimated to be zero by the year 2053. So we can't afford to play around with putting our wealth at the end of our financial lives, whether that's, even if that's just the house, right? By the way, let's stop selling grandma's house, right? Even if grandma's house was the shotgun house, that is still, it still has value. It still has sentimental value, and it still has some level of financial value. Even if it's $10, $12, $15,000, we're still putting that in the hands of the court rather than having just the basic of a document as a will is, to maintain that ownership, to go about doing things the right way. We're putting that in the hands of the court, and we're already projected to have zero wealth by 2053. We can't afford to do that. Okay. So I said all that to say a will is one of the first things that you want to make sure that you have, to make sure you have your stuff in order. A power of attorney is another one. A power of attorney basically says if you're in a hospital bed and you can't make any financial decisions, who is that person that's able to make a transaction on your behalf?
Mm-hmm.
Most people, if they have any level of investments, it's in a 401k or it's in a retirement account that they've been saving on, money's just been coming out of their paycheck over the course of their entire career. Okay, the thing about a 401k is there's only one name on that account. That's not a joint account between you and your spouse or whomever. There's only one name on a retirement account. And if you're in a hospital bed and you're not able to make financial decisions, just because somebody is your spouse does not mean that they're going to be able to access that account. They're going to try to do whatever to take money out to pay for X, Y, and Z, and they're going to get met with a very hard no, because there's only one name on that account and you don't have a power of attorney. So yet again, another simple document that can save a lot of time, stress, energy, and money in a real life situation. Right. So just by having our estate documents, what do we know about Chadwick Boseman, Prince, and Aretha Franklin? They all have in common that they passed away without a will. Without a will. Now the court.
I say, Devin, about that? It's such an important point, especially for Black folk. For anybody who thinks they don't have an awful lot, and that tends to be a lot of Black folk, it doesn't matter how much you have. People think wills are for somebody who's rich, or they don't think about the documents for power of attorney because they think, I don't have anything, nothing's going to happen to me. Accidents are accidents. Okay, we don't go out in the morning and say, let me have a car wreck. But you could end up in the hospital by the end of the day, not being able, do we know this, Renee, to make your own decisions about your life. And if you have not left that in the hands of somebody that you have chosen through those documents, you end up jacked up, potentially. So please impress upon people two things. One, you don't have to be rich to have a will. You should have it no matter what it is you have. Even if most of us think, and I came to you and said this, I don't have anything, right? And then we put out what I had. It was like, okay, you got something, okay? So even if you don't think that you have anything, it's so important to have a will. And it just doesn't cost that much for you to have one. And in fact, you can, in most states, write one out yourself, okay, and sign it, have it witnessed, and it would be treated as a will. And the other thing is those other documents as well end up being the kind of things that people don't like to talk about beforehand, but it's so important for them to do, because once you're in that situation where you need it, it's too late. For a will, you're dead, and you got your folks over here fighting about where your stuff is going to go. And with the other one, you may be totally incapacitated and not even able to make decisions about your own health. And I had somebody recently who was telling me that was taken completely out of the hands of the parents because the 18-year-old did not have those documents, and they were 18, so they were now an adult. Yeah. Who thinks about an 18-year-old? This was the kid's first time going off to college, right? And on a like spring break or something, ended up having this really horrendous situation happen that put them in the hospital without their faculties. And the parents were totally out of the picture because they had no legal standing, because the documents did not exist. So those two documents, just those two alone that you're talking about, are so important, but it's so important for people to put it in their head the right way. Even if you don't think you own anything, have those documents anyway.
Yep. Where do you go get those documents? Check your benefits. If you are working, check your benefits. You might already be paying for access to legal services just through your benefits package alone. So there's a great first place to check, but you want to get on those documents. You rather have them and not need them than need them and not have them. And those documents alone can preserve and protect the legacy that you don't even think you have, but that your family ends up finding out you do have in death or in a situation that now they can't even access it. Secondly, life insurance. The reason that I'm talking about life insurance next is because this is interesting, especially within the African American community, is African Americans actually we are the number one demographic for life insurance. We have more life insurance. There are more African Americans walking around with life insurance than any other demographic. That was surprising to me.
Me too.
The problem with it
for
is
a long time. They would, and let me just say this. It started out not so much as life insurance as burial insurance, because the person wanted to be half-ass buried. Okay, you can watch my grandmother pay that insurance man every week when he came around that 10 cents. Okay, because she was going to make sure she was buried decently and not be embarrassed about it. And then as turns out, I mean, what that was life insurance.
That's life insurance. And that's what I was just about to say is the reason why is because, or the interesting thing is we have it. It's mainly we're looking at it as burial insurance, but we've been miseducated to a degree about it. Is no, this is one of the actual pieces that you can use to build financial legacy with. Because if you're not familiar, life insurance basically isn't a contract. It's an agreement between you and the insurance company that when you pass, this insurance company will cut a check to whomever you want them to cut it to. And that check, by the way, is a tax-free lump sum check. So many people are looking at it as burial insurance. And by all means, yes, the average burial right now ranges anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000. Okay. But we can go so much further beyond that. What about if you've got the mortgage on the house? How does that mortgage get paid off? What about if the kids need to go to school? What about if your spouse would need to go back to school to, be able to operate within the workforce and command a salary that's, decent enough to keep life going for themselves and the kids or whomever? So there's many different reasons why life insurance is so valuable. But again, we're talking about a tax-free check that goes to your family should you pass. So when you start thinking around financial legacy, that could become a very strategic move to add life insurance into your suite of things that you own. Now, getting into the more specifics around life insurance, that's a whole nother ball game, because you do have term life insurance, which lasts for a certain term of time. And then you have permanent life insurance, which is what it is. No matter when I die, this insurance company will cut a check to my family. So there's a lot that comes with life insurance, but the main thing that I want to express is we must understand, especially if we're talking about financial legacy to some degree, is that's not just burial insurance. That is a way for you to leave behind money that can pay off debt, leave behind money that can replace the income that goes missing if you pass away. That is money that can benefit your family in different ways. That's money that can pay for education in different ways. You have strategies out there, and you have families out there that establish a trust. And that trust, if you're not familiar, that trust is essentially a person on paper, right? A trust is an entity, so it can own things. So families will establish a family trust, and then that trust, they will go purchase a life insurance policy on every newborn child in the family. Now, a life insurance company is not going to charge a lot of money for a policy on a child. Why? Because they're playing the game of when would that child pass away. It's very unlikely that that child is going to pass away anytime soon. So the insurance policy is going to be very, very inexpensive. So the family trust will purchase a policy on each newborn child. And then every time that that child grows up, moves on with their life, every time that child is now an adult and that adult passes, the payout from the life insurance policy goes right back into the trust. So now the trust is just recycling these policies and basically becoming a bank that the family builds generation over generation over generation. As new children are born and the old ones pass away, it's money cycling through the family trust. Right. So that's deep. That's a whole strategy. But I'm just saying that to say these are the possibilities out there. It's a rumor. I don't know how true it is, but just the fact that it's a rumor shows you the power of life insurance. It is a rumor that Walt Disney was not able to get the loan that he needed to purchase the land for his first theme park, but he was able to borrow that money from a life insurance policy that the family trust owned. And so he took that money out of the policy and used that to go purchase the land for his first theme park. This is the power of life insurance. Now, obviously, I would need to do a lot more explaining around how you borrow money from life insurance, all of that. But the point is, life insurance is not just this thing that we use to bury ourselves. That is only one aspect of a much larger microcosm of things that you can do with life insurance. So I'm systematically answering your question around to someone who doesn't feel like they have a lot. How can they establish a legacy or build on that? Check you first and make sure that your estate documents are in place, wills, power of attorneys. Those help to protect what you already do have, even if you don't think you have a lot, especially with the court system and the wealth transfer that this country is going through over the next 20 years. Second, evaluate your life insurance. Third, let's evaluate what you do have, right? We have maybe different income streams. We have maybe a house that we've owned. A lot of times people don't even realize the equity that they're sitting on in the house that they've been in for the last 20, 25 years, right? Okay, is it something that you could do to maximize that equity? What can we do there? So there's many different things. It just takes sitting down with someone who understands all of the rocks to look up under. But some of the basics that you can do like that are, number one, check your estate documents. Number two, check your life insurance coverage.
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
I did exactly what he told me to do.
Yeah,
Things together. And I thought about this, Devin, when you said that wealth was not money, it wasn't just income. Because like I said, I don't have a whole lot of money, but I did what you told me to do. And that peace of mind that you talked about, I think that's probably worth more to me than knowing I had a whole lot of money. Because the truth is, what I do have, I feel is so protected because of doing the things that you told me to do, until money just isn't something I have to think about. And I don't have a lot of money, but I know that what I've maximized, because of what you said to me, I've maximized what it takes to make me feel comfortable with what it is that I do have.
That's the other piece of it, is because a lot of times we haven't gone through some level of a planning process and really looking at what's important to us and what do we want. We just sum it up as, oh, well, I need a lot of money. And then as you start to kind of go through that process, you realize I don't need a lot of money to take care of and live the lifestyle that I want to live and have the impact that I want to have. Yeah, I don't need as nearly as much as I thought I needed. Right. So that's another thing that really does come out of financial planning, is you get a much more clear picture of what it is I'm trying to accomplish, what it takes to accomplish that, and where am I in that trajectory of accomplishing that. Oh, okay, I have these gaps. Okay, well, now I have the action steps to close those gaps. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you have the discipline part of it, right? I can build discipline if I know I have actual roadmap to do what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you provide. One thing also, just as a side note, when you're in the military and you're 18 or whatever age you are, you always have a will. They make you sign a will. So whether you have one from a private lawyer or something, or one you wrote yourself, if you're in the military, you get that one. And that, you add it all into that, because they're not sending you out on a deployment to come back to deal with financial issues with your family, how to do it. They don't want to talk about that when they have had the chance to talk about it in the beginning. So that's what they make you do.
Yeah.
That's an example of, obviously it's important to do, right? Because we're making sure that certain entities, people in those jobs, have that already set up. So I get what you're saying, and it didn't become as important to me. A lot of the examples you mentioned that you just talked about, I've lived it, I'm living it now. So it's not uncommon. Mm-hmm. It's more common than, and also the people, as you mentioned. We're here, there's a lot of us now in this position where we need to think about, now that we've made it to this level, the next step is inevitable, right? And it's kind of just almost derelict.
When you say level, you're not talking about money, you're talking about age.
Age,
Right?
life stage.
Age,
Yeah.
right? The boomers have made it to boom. We're here
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
retirement age, and now we're trying to cash in on some of those things that we thought we were putting in place, and now there may be there's disruption in that. So, all of this to our biggest question of why we decided to start this podcast. What does DEI have to do with everything?
Mm.
And in your situation with finance planning, so I think that you've answered a lot of these all over the place that we've been talking, because we've had a great conversation. If you can encapsulate it for us, what do you think that DEI has to do with financial?
I'll answer that from like a client's perspective, everyday person looking at finance and a financial planner and a financial advisor, an economist, right? I'll answer it from that perspective, but then I'll also answer it from within the financial industry, that perspective. So first, from an onlooker's perspective, it matters because we all deal with money. We all deal with money. We all deal with finance on whatever level that we deal with it on. And so that means we deserve to see ourselves there, right? And that's not just African Americans, that's all demographics. We deserve to see ourselves so that we can feel comfortable asking the questions, seeking the knowledge, and trusting the source that the answers are coming from. But when finance only looks one way, you can feel excluded from that, right?
Yes.
So I think that would be from the client's perspective. I've had so many meetings with people from so many different walks of life. It just, there is no way that finance should or could only look and sound like one. There's no way.
Mm-hmm.
From within the industry, again, the same answer, just on this a different side of the table. We deserve to not be underrepresented within the industry, because from within the industry, you may sit down with someone who is totally different walk of life. And it's not to say that you can't find common ground, but a lot of times you won't understand the context of why certain questions are being asked of you, or why a client is in a certain situation, or why it's so important to that client to take care of their parents in their elder years, because that's a part of their culture and that's just how they do it. Whereas you're looking down and sitting there and saying, this just doesn't make sense on paper. You don't have the money to do this. You're going to have to do X, Y, and Z with mom and dad. And it's like, are you crazy? Like, you don't even understand the culture I come from to understand that we don't do that. We don't move like that. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
That's just one example, one example of many. So understanding the context and the culture is so valuable from within this industry, or even certain business decisions that a client would make, again, from a cultural aspect, may not resonate with you as a financial advisor. I think within the industry, I've seen a lot of guys just get very by the book, very black and white around the advice that they give. And there's no context, there's no understanding to it. And so there's no room for them to flow and adjust to the client that they're sitting down with. And I think that limits you as a financial planner if you're strictly, just like anything else in life, if you're so by the book that you can't adjust to the person that is in front of you, you are doing them a disservice and everyone that their finances touch and impact. So what does DEI
did not include anything outside of what has been the mainstream forever? Okay.
That's it.
Look, it included everybody. That would be great. But
That's
if then you're missing a whole lot.
Yep. That's it. That's it. So DEI brings the human aspect to finances. And I think finances for many people got to this place of exclusivity more than inclusivity, where if you didn't look, talk, and sound like money,
Yeah.
then
Hamilton, right? You look like your daddy has money.
yeah. Then now you're excluded from wealth. And really what wealth is to a lot of people, when you say the word wealth, people get different pictures in their mind. But at the end of the day, what we're all seeking is some level of autonomy, some level of sovereignty, some level of being able to provide for our families, some level of being able to be free and happy and joy. Those are like really those are the real things that fit inside of what wealth means to someone when they picture wealth in their mind. It's those things. So to feel excluded from that because you don't look, sound, talk like that's unfair. That's a disservice to just a human being in general.
Exactly.
That's my answer on what DEI has to do with money and finance.
I think probably the bigger context even to the things that you're saying, Devin, is that we come from a culture in which, because of our unique history as all sorts of minorities in the US, which we know in 2046 are scheduled to be the majority, we have had a picture painted for us of what wealth looks like. And very often we have been excluded from those means of being able to access that. For instance, coming into a country and not being able to be paid for your labor. I mean, it starts there. Yeah, I'm talking the slavery thing, because it has things that carry over from that. And a part of the picture that's painted that you were talking about what wealth is, ends up being a picture that, because that picture comes up, and it comes up in a lot of different ways. I mean, you see it in movies, you see it in magazine articles, TV. I mean, it's always there in some way, shape, or form, and we are not usually in that picture. So our idea of what wealth truly is to some sense distorted in a couple of ways. One, we don't see ourselves in it. So the idea of actually being able to get to the point that you're talking about, being financially comfortable, ends up being something that a lot of people cannot see themselves doing. They know that they sort of want to do that, but they just can't see themselves in that picture because it's not a picture that's shown around very often. The other piece of that is the idea of what wealth looks like. So very often people accuse Black folk, at least, of being conspicuous consumers. You know, they don't have any money, but they got this fancy car that they're going to end up having to sleep in because they can't afford a house. That sort of thing comes with the idea that the whole thing about conspicuous consumption is that you're doing what you think wealth looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Being a part of that, not getting to see it from the inside.
Yep.
You go by what you see from the outside and take it sort of to its nth degree. So you'll wear a certain kind of clothing or have a certain kind of car that you may not be able to afford because it gives you what you think of as the idea of what wealth is.
Mm-hmm.
That's so true.
One of the things, because we're all looking at these pictures, it makes sense that that's what you would think based on the picture that you see. But we all need to understand that we have the capacity to become wealthy. Okay. One of the things that always gives me is, this idea that Blacks are lazy. Well, who was it that was doing the stuff that y'all didn't want to do? Okay? That's cognitive dissonance to me. I don't understand. We were the ones who were out in the fields working. We were taking care of your kids, but yet we were the lazy ones. We were the dirty ones. Like, what sense does that
We can't
make?
keep it right. We can't keep families together.
Yeah,
Because it makes us less deserving.
it
So
makes no sense
we
whatsoever.
have a lot of money to buy cars and have a lot of fluff to us. How we
Yeah,
got there, I don't know. The lazy and the getting money part is kind of falls apart, the argument, but somehow it happens for Black people. And we hear that message all the time, not just in words, but in movies, but in people's behaviors, other people's behaviors, the way that they talk to us in commercials. It's a lot. It's all over the place. So how do we get that pass through that? Talking about things that matter to us, replacing it with things that matter, like this.
yes, yes,
That's
yes.
it. That's it. I'm so grateful that you two have me here.
I love what it is that you said, Devin, because people can hear that and think that it's attainable for them, and it is. It takes work on your part, getting those documents in order, being disciplined, like Renee was talking about. But this is something that's attainable for us. We don't have to look to anybody else to do it. We can do that if the picture, and you started off with this, if the picture in our head is right about what this looks like and our ability, if we believe in our ability to be able to access that, even if we have very little. And, we are real good at working with what we got, right? You've heard those stories of people. I remember one woman was the cook at the school for the kids, and she ended up dying and leaving like millions of dollars to these kids because she had invested what she had, and it ended up being this tremendous amount of money that just knocked everybody on their heels when she died and they saw how much it was. So I love the idea of not only that DEI does have a connection to, and like you said, on both sides, to finances, both from the finance, those who are providing the information, making sure that they're inclusive, that they don't draw these unwarranted assumptions about people that make them think that people can't do something,
Right.
or that they exclude them based or question them based on the kind of stuff that they have as priorities for them. I remember reading a story about a guy who took his family, because that's how they roll. He was Hispanic and he took his family to the furniture store, and they kept looking to the grandma to say, is this okay to you? And finally the furniture salesman said, why do you keep asking her? Like, she's the old person. As disrespectful as that was, right? And the man walked out of the store and he said to him, in our family, that's the person that holds the most power. They're the most respected because they're the oldest. If you didn't know that, you would have come at it like that person did, and you end up losing that whole sale. Okay, the same thing can happen when you're talking about people's money. So DEI is very much connected. And again, we cannot overemphasize the impact that our particular history has on these things. It makes it so we haven't had to think about a lot of different people for a long time. When our attention was finally brought to it under something that had to do with DEI, which was really about being more inclusive of those who had been excluded before, then you realize there really is a value in that, not only for those who are giving out that information, but also for the people who are receiving it.
Yes.
All they want to do is access wealth just like everybody else is. Isn't that what the financial advisors are all about? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. I mean, we could trade places the way you just laid that out.
Well, looking at that big picture is what I do. I mean, that I've been at this for 43 years. That's such a huge piece. And one of the things that we thought about when we first decided to have the podcast is the idea that so many people didn't really know what DEI was or what it was connected to, because if they did, they would have known that the idea of having an executive order that got rid of it would sound ludicrous, because it's connected to everything. If what you want to do is to truly be the country that you said you were, and everybody. And it's one thing to not include people when you sort of didn't know better, although we're over here saying, how could you not know better? But
Mhm.
the thing is, once you do know better, the usual rule is once you know better, you do better.
Right.
So we're living in a situation where you knew better, you didn't know, then
Mhm.
you learned from 1964 on, you learned. And here we are, January 20th, 2025. You want to not do better. In fact, you want to not only not do better, you want to wipe out all that had happened in that period after you did know better. And we're just here to say that's not quite how that works. It's connected to a whole lot more than you think it is. And you've been the perfect example of how it's connected to stuff that we hadn't even thought about, like what's it got to do with finances or financial advising. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you both. Really enjoyed this.
My money to the right person.
Well, I like to get money to the right person. And I mean, my money is not. On that.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you both so much for giving me the opportunity to just share my story. Number one, talk about something that I'm passionate about. Number two, and my prayer is always the same anytime I speak. I hope I said something that resonated with somebody to the point where it can create some type of change in your life, some type of positive action in your life. Even if it's just, let me go check. Let me double check if my life insurance is what I think it is. That means I said something that resonated you to the point of actually putting energy into making sure that your situation is as positive as it can be. And so that's my hope. That's my prayer. And if that is the case, then I've made the impact that I desired to make. So thank you both so much for the opportunity. If anyone is interested in learning more about me or grabbing a book, my book is called The Wealth Blueprint. You can track it down by visiting devinalphin.com, the way it's spelled right there on the screen, devinalphin.com. I am so close to having this thing up on Amazon. It has been a back and forth with Amazon. However, the book is available through my website. You can get access to the ebook as well as the audio book. That physical copy will be available on Amazon, hopefully very, very, very soon. So devinalphin.com, The Wealth Blueprint. Thank you both.
And Renee, it'll be in the description, right? The notes.
Well, I'll put it in the notes, but I'll also put it on the screen. I'll do this part. And that's it. Yeah. Devin, I'm going to ask you a question. This is off topic from that, off topic of what we've already discussed. So close out questions. One, what's your favorite color?
Red.
I thought you were going to say green. I was red. Okay, cool. So what's your favorite movie?
Ooh. That is a tough one. Probably The Matrix. Yeah, The Matrix.
Okay, good one. I can see why.
Don's over there like, oh, I gotta unpack that one.
I gotta go see that one again because that's heavy.
Yeah. And if you could go somewhere, anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Right now, I would go back to South Africa.
Okay.
I would go back to South Africa.
Just in a row. Our last guest is all about Cape Town. He's making a move.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that much.
That's incredible. So with that, that's a nice. It has come a long way. So that's a great spot to have chosen. Yeah. If you have any time you want to come back, we are happy to have you. We are also, if you have some kind of tidbits that you want to just drop in and send to us, we'd be more than happy to present that on our show.
Awesome.
And hopefully that your journey on this new, I guess, direction that you're taking on an entrepreneurial and your own entrepreneurial legacy will be working out the way that you do very quickly. Hopefully we can be a help to that.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Thank you, ladies, so much. Really appreciate it. I had fun.
Thank you so much.
Good to talk to you.
Great
Yeah.
to talk to you. Great to see you both.
Yeah.